So now, as fears over a widening war in the region grow, Jordan's King Abdullah has called for an end to violence against civilians. For more on this, we've reached the former Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister of Jordan, Marwan Muasher. He opened Jordan's first embassy in Israel, and he is now a Vice President at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Mr. Muasher, thank you for making time for us. Now, I do want to begin with some of the developments over the past 48 hours out of this country, Canada, because Canada's Defence Minister, Bill Blair, said over the weekend that our government believes with a high degree of confidence, end quote, that Israel did not strike a hospital in Gaza last week. We know there have, of course, been reports over the past few days that U.S. intelligence expressed a similar conclusion. Jordan, we know, had canceled a planned summit with U.S. President Joe Biden after that blast. What's your take on that now that we're seeing more information come out from different countries? Was the move to cancel that too hasty?
I don't think it was too hasty. Public opinion would not have allowed it, RT. We are getting contradictory information about who hit the hospital, but that's frankly not the point. The point is that 5,000 Gazans have already lost their lives, even without counting the hospital incident. So we are having area bombardment and civilians are being killed. That's the fact. And that's why we need to stop any invasion of Israel into Gaza, because the simple fact is you cannot separate civilians from militants in Gaza.
Given, as you've outlined there, of course, the mass number of casualties that we're seeing in Gaza right now, wondering, with this staunch backing of Israel from the U.S. and other countries, how is that being viewed by countries across the Arab world?
There is particular concern on behalf of Jordan and certainly Egypt also, that Israel might use this invasion into Gaza to affect a mass transfer of civilians from Gaza to Egypt, and if the conflict expands to the West Bank, from the West Bank to Jordan. That is of major concern because nobody wants to repeat another Nakba, another mass exodus of people that happened in 1948. And that is a huge concern for regional countries. As far as Hezbollah is concerned, RT, I do not expect Hezbollah to be involved in any major offensive at this point in time. Remember that Israel went into Gaza 5 times in the last 20 years, and Hezbollah did not get involved. What we are seeing so far is more tactical in nature, and unless the conflict really expands, I do not foresee that Hezbollah will get involved.
Now, you seem really confident in that assertion, and to the point, of course, of much of the coverage, much of the conversations happening, what we're seeing this time is unprecedented. So is there then a possibility for that wider regional conflict and the involvement then of Hezbollah?
Of course, there is always the possibility, but right now I do not see it. I don't think Hezbollah is interested in widening the conflict. It will be inflicted with huge casualties. I don't think it is prepared to go in the battle at this time. And so my best prediction is that it will not.
Part of course, what we've heard as well is a lot of concern about whether or not international laws are being followed and respected here in this particular conflict. I'm wondering what sort of concerns you have surrounding that.
Of course, international law is being violated, Arti. There is no such thing as aerial bombardment of a locked-up population of 2 million people where international law is not violated. The whole context of the occupation is a violation of international law. What is Israel doing that, other than, occupying people in the longest occupation in modern history? So if we want to talk about the issue in legal terms, there is no question that international law is being violated. There is no question that Israel's aerial bombardment, let alone, an invasion into Gaza is a gross violation of international law.
Now, in a speech at the summit in Cairo, we did hear Jordanian king say, quote, over the past 15 years, we've seen how the dreams of a two-state solution and the hopes of an entire generation have turned into despair. Wondering whether or not there's a possibility to revive any of those dreams, any of those discussions about that sort of a solution.
I think it's becoming clear, if not already, that there is no military solution to this conflict. You're not going to be able to wipe out Hamas in a military operation, just as Israel was not able to wipe out Hezbollah in the operation it conducted against Lebanon in 2006. We have to have a political process, but not an open-ended political process that goes on forever without ending the occupation. If the international community is serious about ending this cycle of violence between the two sides, it has to talk about a political process that ends the occupation in order to establish a two-state solution. If that does not happen, then I'm afraid the cycle of violence will continue and people will die for no reason.
Many discussions are underway, too, in regards to a ceasefire as a first step, and then the long-term goal, of course, peace in the region. Do you think either of these are achievable in the short and long term?
They are achievable in the long term if people realize there's no military solution. I'm afraid that in the short term, the stars are not aligned. You have a US administration which is preoccupied with the presidential elections next year. You have a Palestinian Authority which today is at its weakest. And you have a radical Israeli government that is not just not talking about a political settlement, but that has made its views clear that it does not intend to end the occupation and it does not intend to establish a two-state solution. So I'm afraid that there is, no short-term path towards turning this cycle of violence into a political process that is meaningful. In the long term, people will have to understand that there is no military solution and that no matter what the positions of the two sides, a political settlement is the only way to end the violence.
And Mr. Muasher, finally, I wanted to focus back on those who are in Gaza right now. We know over the weekend at that Cairo Peace Summit that we were discussing earlier, Jordan's king, of course, called for the de-escalation of the conflict, but also declared accepting refugees from Gaza to be a red line that won't be crossed. Is there a point? Is there a point or a threshold where that stance may be reversed?
I don't think so. I think this position is in coordination with the Palestinians who themselves do not want to leave. Remember, the Palestinians learned a lesson when they left in 1948 and were not allowed back by Israel. They don't want to repeat that. And so, the stark reality is that a lot of deaths are going to take place because of an invasion that is senseless. It does not going to result in anything. But that position is one that aids the Palestinians, is not one against them in staying on their land. Why does Israel, for example, if it's serious about, its care for civilian lives, why doesn't it allow the Palestinians to go into the West Bank and to stay on their land instead of leaving it and going to Egypt or Jordan?
Mr. Muasher, I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.